And you are on, sir.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee meeting of August 2nd, 2021 at 5 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Counselor Cassett,
Here.
Counselor Villarreal,
Present.
Counselor Lindell,
Here.
Counselor Romero Worth,
I'm here.
and Counselor Abeyta.
I'm here. Okay, so next is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes from staff?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, changes from the committee. Can I have a motion regarding the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
and Counselor Abeyta.
Yes. Okay, so the agenda's been approved. That takes us to approval of the consent agenda. Are there any items that the committee would like to pull off the consent agenda? Counselor Lindell,
Item A and item F.
item A and item F. Okay, other items? Counselor Cassett,
Item G, please.
item G. Okay. Any others? Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And then again, for the record, the items that were pulled are item A, item F, and item G. Okay, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Abeyta.
Yes. Okay, so the consent agenda has been approved. Next is approval of our minutes. These are the Finance Committee meeting minutes of July 19th, 2021. Are there any changes from staff?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Changes from the committee? Can I have a motion regarding the minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
excuse me, Counselor Villarreal,
Bless you. Yes.
thank you. Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Abeyta.
Yes. Okay, so the minutes have been approved. So that brings us to action items, consent items that were pulled. The first is A, which is consideration of bill number 2021-16, an ordinance relating to the campaign code, amending section 9-2.3 SFCC to amend the definition of a political committee to include a threshold amount of reporting contributions, amending section 9-2.6 to increase the aggregate expenditure amount requiring reporting to $500 and to exempt aggregate amounts of less than $25 from separate reporting requirements, amending section 9-2.7 to make necessary changes regarding references to a quote political committee, and amending section 9.2.11 to exempt aggregate contribution amounts of less than $25 from a separate reporting requirements. Councilwoman Lindell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the way that I read this and the way that I understood it was that we were trying to bring ourselves into the same as, basically the reasons for most of this was to try to bring ourselves into alignment with the state. Is that right?
Counselor Lindell, if I may. I was hoping actually that Marcos Martinez would be here tonight. I probably should have checked on that earlier in the day. Yeah, I think that is right. I think it's also this bill was vetted by the ECRB and the election, what is ECRB? Election Committee and Ethics Review Board, is that right? And they recommended making these changes, and I think there are a variety of reasons for this. And I was, again, hoping that Marcos could be here to speak in more detail. I was not at the ECRB meeting the night that they discussed this, so I can't give you a lot of depth, but certainly can as we move this through the process.
Okay, the only one of these that bothers me is in executive summary in the memorandum is item number 1. It amends the definition of political committee to include the requirement that an entity has expended $5,000 or more during a single election to trigger PAC reporting requirements. Currently, we're at 2,500. I don't know why we need to increase that. I think that in fact, I don't favor increasing it. I think if someone's spending $2,500, they're spending $2,500 and I'd like to know about it. I don't see why we would go along with increasing that to 5,000. I think that that allows, and maybe I'm reading this wrong or interpreting it wrong. That's possible. But you get 10 people that spend $2,500 and you got $25,000. I don't know why we should raise that to 50,000. I'm just not comfortable with that. So, and Councilor Romero Worth, I don't expect you to have an answer to that. I'm just throwing it out there that is probably, I'm not going to hold this up, but that's probably an amendment that I'll be bringing to keep that at $5,000. I just don't see, unless someone can give me a really good reason to, I meant keep it at 2,500, unless someone can give me a really good reason to dial that up to 5,000, I think 2,500 is enough. Maybe some other counselors have some thoughts on that. I don't know, but that's the thing that struck me with these changes.
Counselor, I hear you. I think there is some larger context, and again, I'm sorry that Marcos isn't here to provide that. And I have some thoughts, but I would rather that he provide them.
That's fine. I understand. That's just a stumbling place for me to double that. And I don't see to what advantage that is to everybody. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councilor Lindell, for pulling this item because I had the same question. Part of it, I was trying to remember the history around this. We had discussions about this item in the prior administration, and there was, I thought, a lawsuit that was connected to this. And so that's why it would have been helpful to hear from Marcos about the details of that, because I remember we were kind of at a standstill to make changes to the section because of a lawsuit. And I don't know if it was a state-related lawsuit or directed to the city. So I think it'd be helpful to have more information. And I was checking to see where this is going next, which is quality of
Quality
life.
of life on Wednesday, I believe. So
So
we
that-
can, I can try to get the election experts here so that they can provide the context.
Yeah, that would be helpful, because I think there was a bigger picture here, or what we couldn't act on this these changes because of a lawsuit, I believe, but I don't know the reason why we ended up coming up with the 5,000. So I would like to know that as well. This was solely about PACs though, correct? These changes are solely about PACs, correct?
Third-party expenditure committees.
Okay. All
Which
right.
could be a PAC or might not be.
Exactly. Okay, so I will wait to ask my questions on Wednesday. Thank you.
Okay, so what are the wishes of the committee?
How, I guess I would be more inclined to move this along without a recommendation, just because I feel like we need some more context.
Okay.
I'll
so-
second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We will move it along without a recommendation. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes,
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
and Counselor Beta.
Yes. Okay, so that item moves along. That's going to bring us to the next item that was pulled, which is F, request for approval of a professional services agreement for a total amount of $252,478 for a 4-year sole source contract to United Way of Central New Mexico to operate a 211 call center in Santa Fe City and County. Councilwoman Lindell.
thank you, Chair. Let's see the baby. Oh. So just some basic questions on this, Ms. Sanchez. Has this group ever done this type of work before, or are they currently doing this type of work?
So Chairman Abeta, counselors, United Way of Central New Mexico actually operates the entire 211 hotline for regionally now, especially for Southern New Mexico, but is looking at expanding throughout the entire state. So they are very well versed in operating 211 hotlines.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. I didn't want to be working with a provider that's inexperienced. It's super important work, and I think probably getting it set up can be a little tricky. And so I'll make a motion to approve, and I think the baby should also get to vote.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second in discussion. Councilwoman Cassette.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair, and I agree the baby should definitely get a vote. I just had one quick question. So we are starting with a 0.75 FTE. Do we have an idea about the workload that this individual can be expecting? Do we think that that's going to be enough, or will they quickly be overwhelmed?
So Chair, Counselor Cassett, the FTE is actually going to be overseeing a number of volunteers that are going to be part of the 211 hotline. So there'll actually be something like 10 to 15 volunteers that will help to operate the hotline while it's going. So it's not just the FTE. There's also going to be another part-time executive director that's going to be funded directly through United Way. That's also going to oversee the project. And that's going to be another part-time staff member as well. And so those are who's actually going to be overseeing the project. And so even though it sounds like a large workload, the heavy lift is actually going to come more from the volunteers versus the position.
Okay, wonderful. I'm glad to hear, because in my experience with 211 lines, they're pretty active in general. And is that how the system is set up in Central New Mexico, that it's one individual managing volunteers?
So depending on how extensive the 211 hotline is and the amount of calls that come in, it could be staffed by 1 or 2 individuals who are coordinating with all the various volunteers. I'm going to say that our hotline network is probably going to grow given the amount of needs in the community. So I imagine that eventually they'll probably bring on another staff person. But for now, to get it initiated and started, I think 1 is probably enough for now until we actually get an idea of the call volume and what we're seeing in the community.
Wonderful. Thank you. That makes sense. And I absolutely always trust your judgment on these things, Julie. You're very in tune with the community and what's going on. I just want to say that I'm really excited that we are getting this up and running. Again, I've worked with 211s in other communities, and they really can be just an incredible resource. So I was very excited when I saw this item come through. Thank you so much for your work on this, and thank you to your team.
Okay, Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick clarification on that. Thank you, Julie, for joining us. So if it's Central New Mexico and they're actually looking at more of a larger region, if it's Santa Fe County related, do they then switch over to that 1 person and volunteers that are specific to Santa Fe County and City of Santa Fe? Or how does that work?
So that's a really great question, Councilor Villarreal. We're currently working on the workflow right now for the contractor. We won't actually get anything fully in paper until the contract is executed. But I imagine that the volunteers are going to be from Santa Fe County and focus specifically in Santa Fe County. One of the things we did have written in was to make sure that there were enough bilingual folks on their volunteer list, and they have in discussions prioritized volunteers for that population. So we're trying to really work hard and making sure that the volunteers are reflective of the community they're serving, and that they know our community as well and the resources that we have here.
That's great to know. But the actual calls, they go into the main center, right? The main call center. So when the person that answers realizes it's focused on Santa Fe County, what do? Do they then transfer it to the Santa Fe County / City of Santa Fe Connect folks and volunteers?
So yeah, actually, that's a great question. So currently the 211 line is actually my office line and the county's office line. And so they're actually going to be looking at integrating the numbers that already exist, meaning ours, into the hotline, and then using those as kind of the alternative, I guess you can say, like ways to get into contact with 211 besides just 211. For folks who may be from out of, say, another county, they're able to connect them via their own internal system to, say, like Bernalillo County, Sandoval County, and those areas that they exist. But the Santa Fe resources are specifically for residents that live within Santa Fe County and the city of Santa Fe.
That's good to know. So Julie, we currently, if I called 211, it's actually activated now?
So if you wanted to get in touch with 211, well, it's not activated at all. But the way that folks have been getting into the Connect network is through my office line or through Jennifer Romero's office line over at the county. So that's currently how folks who may not have internet access get into Connect, is either one of those ways. And so it becomes really complicated because then I have to call them back, screen them, and I become a case manager all over again.
I'm glad to hear that will be moving off your plate, because that's a lot of work. I think that's it. Thank you, Ms. Sanchez.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
and Counselor Abeyta.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to item G, which is request for approval of amendment number 1 of the professional services agreement number 19-0127 with WSP USA Engineering Services related to the Arroyo Chamizos Crossing project to amend the scope of work and increase compensation by a sum not to exceed $1 million, excluding gross receipts tax. Councilwoman Cassette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple pretty quick questions. And I was reading the scope of work, and there's a lot of things that say tasks may be amended at the city's discretion. And then there's another component that says that phases of the scope of work shall be authorized by the city through the issuance of purchase orders. And given this is such a big project taking place in my district, what I'm really curious about is at what points are we going to be getting information back to City Council about each of the phases, and where are our decision points? And when we talk about changing the scope of work, is that the city's discretion meeting the governing body, or is that something that's already predetermined at this moment?
Hello, Chairman Abeyta, Councilor Cassett. Oh, I'm sorry. Is Ramella here? Tom's here. Okay, great. Go ahead, Tom.
Councilor Cassett, I just wanted to let you know that Ramella has difficulty getting in, but I have her on the phone right now, and she heard your question, so she's going to respond to it, if that's all right, Director Wheel. So go ahead, Ramella.
If it's okay with the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Ramella.
Okay. Councilor Sanchez, we are requesting amending the scope of work now, and to include the changes in phase 1B, which is the detailed evaluation of the alternative B, and then including all the scope of work which was in the RFP issued in 2018. That means phase 2, phase 3, up to construction, which means the phase 2 is preliminary design, phase 3 is final design, and phase 4 is construction. So when this contract is approved with the following amendments, with the amendments in scope of work, then it doesn't go back again to the governing body when we define the scope of work. For example, for phase B preliminary study, the general scope of work is in the amendment. But if there is some problem, like for example, a more detailed traffic study, it is included in the amendment, but the refined scope of work will not go back to the governing body. It will be reflected in the PO, in the purchase order. We will attach the refined scope of work in the PO, and that is the normal practice of engineering division with projects like this.
If I could add a little bit to that, and maybe if I could, so there is a public involvement planned for this September. As the project develops and as the design develops, we will continue to have touch points with the public and get their feedback and incorporate that feedback. So it isn't designed yet, and there aren't. So we're, as it evolves, and then we did bring an update to the governing body something like a month and a half ago, you might remember, with Leroy Pacheco, and we'll continue to do that throughout the project. I think, probably like a month or two after a public engagement event seems like a really good time to bring the feedback and then the adjustments. And so I think what we could do, Ramella, is map out a little schedule for the counselors to see sort of where the touch points are, as Councilor Cassett is bringing up.
Yeah, thank you, Regina. Go ahead, Ramella.
I'm so sorry, but I don't have visual. I have difficulty hearing the comments and the question, and I do not know if the counselors can hear me. I'm so sorry about this. I'm trying to connect for 20 minutes and I was not able to connect.
I can hear you loud and clear, Ramella. So thank you. You're good. The workaround is working well with the phone call.
Sorry about that. I was on for item H that was approved on the consent agenda. So I saw that you had pulled her item and I just wanted to make sure I called her and try to get in.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate the creativity in our virtual world. Director Wheeler, that would be really helpful to better understand those touch points. Again, this is it's a project in my district. There's a lot of opinions about it. I really do want to make sure that that I'm having an opportunity to hear that feedback and to make sure that we are keeping a pulse on some of the different conversations that are happening. So having those conversations would be really wonderful, and getting those reports would be really helpful. So thank you. I'm sorry, I'm very distracted. There's a menagerie around me as usual on Zoom. So yes, that'd be really great. And then, I mean, I guess kind of what I'm hearing is that after the first phase of that study, right now I thought that phase 1B was an additional study. And from there was really the discussion of, do we move forward here? But it sounds like that phase 1A was really the deciding point of, we're moving forward with the Arroyo Chamiso crossing. And right now it's a lot of community feedback on how we move forward. Am I understanding that correctly?
Just to clarify, thank you for that question. So we did do the study about alternatives, and there were a number of alternatives. And then those alternatives were discussed with the community and evaluated for pros and cons and cost and right-of-way impacts. And the Richards extension was the preferred alternative. They're continuing to do more detailed evaluation of that, and it continues to be a good option. I think that's what September will share, some more details of that, deeper dive into the preferred alternative. And then we'll be moving into preliminary design on that. So now we do have the basic approach, and it's some of the details about the cross section of the roadway or the landscaping, or how do we handle some of the right of way that we need to get to make it happen. So it is the alternative has really been selected at this point.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. And I look forward to seeing the schedule of what some of the different touch points are going to be with the governing body, and where there really will be opportunity for us to weigh in and to have more conversations about this. No further questions.
Okay, any other questions? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Can I have a roll call, please?
Councillor Cassett,
Yes.
Councillor Villarreal,
Yes.
Councillor Lindell,
Yes.
Councillor Romero Worth,
Yes.
and Councillor Beta.
Yes. Okay, so that concludes the items that were pulled off consent. We're on item 7, matters from staff. Ms. McCoy.
Mr. Chair, we don't have any matters at this time.
Okay, matters from the committee. No matters from the chair. I don't have anything. Our next meeting is Monday, August 16th. And so with that, we are adjourned. Thank you. See you all in an hour and a half.